Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome into another edition of Tider Insider TV. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm Gary Harris. Our program, as always, presented by Buffalo Rock Bottling Company. Ice cold Pepsi Cola tonight. It hits the spot. Remember, when you're in your grocery store, pick up a case of Pepsi, Pepsi Next, Diet Pepsi, Pepsi Max, or any other great Pepsi product at all your Alabama grocery stores. Well, Rodney, let's talk about what happened this past Saturday. Obviously, we're going to get in depth on Alabama and LSU in just a moment. But before we get there, let's put a ribbon on Alabama-Mississippi State, because I'm not going to say it was as big a game. The hype for that one is big as what's coming up this week. But still, this time last week, there were a lot of people, Rodney. It's convenient memory loss. I remember a lot of people saying, not necessarily us, but a lot of people saying Alabama could get a scare in the fourth quarter. This one could go down to the wire. They haven't faced an offense like Mississippi State. So there were a lot of people that were trying to say this was going to be a really tough game, and not to take anything away from the Bulldogs, but I think we both said they weren't quite ready for prime time yet, and it was played out. This one was 24-0 at half, and once again, in the second half, Alabama didn't do anything dramatic. They didn't have to, but they cruised a 38-7 victory. The only the only touchdown for Mississippi State, Rodney, coming late in the game against Alabama's second and third team defense. You know, I hate to keep using this term, but it was another dominating performance.
Well, it really was, Gary, when you look at how Alabama came out of the gates, just kind of took Mississippi State out of the game real quickly in the first quarter, took charge, and Mississippi State really didn't know what hit them. You know, a big play. Nick Saban talked about the blocked field goal early on when it was 7-0. D. Milliner blocks the Mississippi State field goal attempt on their first possession, and, you know, from there it was downhill for Mississippi State, really, and I think Alabama kind of coasted a little bit after that, but you know, like you said, Gary, it was a very convincing win. And this, people might say, well, it was Mississippi State, but really, even though it was 38-7, Gary, I still think this is a much better Mississippi State team than some of the ones we've seen in the past. I really think Tyler Russell is an outstanding quarterback.
No doubt about it. There you see a huge play in the game. Even though it was 24-0 at this point, this was early third quarter. Mississippi State went on a 97-yard drive, moving the football from the shadow of their own goal line to the Alabama 1. If they convert there, you know, it's 24-7. There's still a lot of time left. So even though Alabama would have probably won the football game, that was the type of big play performance that we saw from the defense. You mentioned the blocked field goal. That play, every time Alabama needed to step up big in the football game, other than right there at the end with the backups, well, they did.
That's a 10-point swing when you're talking about the blocked field goal in the red zone earlier in the game, and then that play in particular, Gary, the interception by Robert Lester, his second in a row, by the way, in the end zone. 2 weeks in a row. He had one against Tennessee last week as the Vols were trying to score in the second half. But, you know, again, it was the defense gives up points very begrudgingly.
It's a huge win, because if you don't win that one, then the game this week at LSU not nearly as big as it would have been if we see Mr. Touchdown there. Kenyon Drake, all he does is come in and score touchdowns. Alabama 38, Mississippi State 7. Let's take a look at the stat sheet, and you see all the numbers there. I will say this, the 256 yards of offense by Mississippi State, the highest output against Alabama since the Michigan game. A lot of that came on that 97-yard drive, and then a lot of it came on the final drive of the game where their backups moved it down. But still, not a 300-yard offensive output. Alabama has not given up one of those all year long. You see the consistency. You see McCarron again, 2 more touchdown passes, no interceptions, 18 this season, Rodney, and he's only 2 away from tying the school record. Another big game for T.J. Yeldon, 8.5 yards per carry. But the big number there, turnovers. Mississippi State came in #1 in the country and turnovers. They cough it up 3 times against Alabama, 1 interception, 2 fumbles. The Tide with no turnovers. A lot of reasons Alabama won the football game, but that's a big one right now.
Well, and I think also certainly that's a very key stat, but also look at the rushing yards, Gary. When you look at Mississippi State, came in with Ladarius Perkins leading the SEC at 103 yards per game. I think he had, 38? And then you see Mississippi State had 47 overall. Basically, most of their yardage came on the arm of Tyler Russell. And again, he made some really good throws, but I thought Alabama played pretty well, too. Got some pressure on him.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on, Rod. We got some coach speak for you now, as both Nick Saban and Les Miles held their weekly press conferences on Monday in Tuscaloosa and Baton Rouge, respectively. BCS top-ranked Alabama will play BCS fifth-ranked LSU on Saturday night at Tiger Stadium. Of course, these two teams split a pair of meetings last year. LSU winning in Tuscaloosa 9-6 in overtime, but Bama getting sweet revenge 21-0 in the BCS championship game in New Orleans. Now, it's obvious on both sides that this is not just another game.
You know, this year's team, they still got great running backs, and they're still able to run the ball very, very effectively. And winning on the line of scrimmage in this game, both sides of the ball, is probably, you know, one of the most important factors in the game. They're a ball hawking, you know, big turnover type of defense that creates a lot of negative plays for you. They still have really good explosive players on offense to make big plays down the field. So if you're trying to load up to stop the run, you can create problems for yourself. So
Alabama is a very, very fine football team, well prepared, very talented. Certainly, they've won every game by a minimum margin of 19 points. You know, they're. I watched every snap on Saturday, watching the Mississippi State Alabama game, and it looked just as bad on the coach's copy. Looks like that Alabama team's pretty good.
Both these teams are pretty good. Let's turn our attention now to the big matchup Saturday night, 7 o'clock at Death Valley. Rodney, Alabama leads the nation in scoring defense at 8.1 points per game. LSU ranks 9th at 14.6 points per game, and that's really where both these teams, you know, start and finish. Not that they don't have good offenses, but it's all about defense with LSU.
Yeah, and LSU's real nasty up front, Gary. There's no doubt about that. Their front four is outstanding. Big, strong, physical guys, fast on the outside with Sam Montgomery and Barkevius Mingo. And John Chavis always does an outstanding job. Their defensive coordinator formerly at Tennessee, as you remember, and all the great defenses he put together there. If there's an area where I think LSU could be hurt, it's in the secondary. Eric Reed, the safety, is a great player, one of the best in the country, no question about that. But, Gary, I think there are some holes in some other spots in that secondary that could be exploited.
Offensively, they've had some issues. Mettenberger, the quarterback, big things were expected. You know, he's had a tough transition, to be quite honest with you. Has not made the plays that they expected him to make. The receiving core has been a little bit spotty, but in the last couple of games, an already good running game for them has been boosted by the emergence of freshman Jeremy Hill. We'll remember him from recruiting. Alabama recruited this kid. In the last two ball games, he has gashed South Carolina and Texas A&M, a couple pretty good defenses, for 251 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns, becoming the first LSU true freshman to surpass 100 yards in consecutive games since 2003 when Nick Saban was the head coach. This is a big, strong, fast running back.
It is. He is. He's an outstanding player, Gary. And you know, they've got a horde of running backs. We know about that. Certainly Spencer Ware, the Hilliard kid, so that they're loaded at the tailback spot. But Mettenberger's really struggled throwing the football, Gary. He's about a 45% passer against SEC teams in their 4 SEC games. He's 49 of 106 for 572 yards, and just 1 touchdown pass came in their last game against Texas A&M. He's thrown a couple of picks, and he's really struggled. Now, part of that is because they've struggled up front offensively, keeping people healthy and other issues. They've started 5 different combinations up front offensively on that line, and that, you know, that's certainly not helpful when you're talking about a new quarterback, a guy that's not experienced. They're having to max protect a lot in the passing game. That means they're keeping guys in, tight ends, backs in to protect him. 1 receiver, 2 receiver routes on a lot of pass plays down the field, and you know that's not sometimes doesn't always lend to being very productive.
Alabama is great against the run. LSU likes to run. The Tide giving up only 57.2 rushing yards per game. That's the best in the nation. Some numbers for you. LSU's won 7 of the last 10 against Alabama. And Nick Saban just 3-3 against Les Miles. There you see last week LSU was idle. How much does the off week help Mettenberger, you think?
Well, I mean, you know, that remains to be seen. You know, when you look at it overall, though, Gary, I think, you know, certainly, you know, not having played, that gives you an opportunity to rest up, get some of your guys healthy. From that perspective, I think it's great. But on the other hand, I'm not really sure because LSU, they've talked so much about revenge for last year's BCS title game loss. And it's so much build-up, so much anxiety over a 2-week period. You know, sometimes it can affect you in a negative way when you have that revenge factor on your mind.
I think Alabama's got a little revenge on their minds. They got knocked out of the SEC championship game by LSU. I think they want to make it there. See some key players on the screen. You mentioned that defense. Great pair of defensive ends, and Mingo and Montgomery. Minner is a menacing linebacker, and Eric Reed, one of the best safeties in the country. Should be a great matchup on Saturday night. Still to come on Insider TV, guard Chance Warmack continues to live up to the hype as one of the nation's most dominating offensive linemen. We'll tell you what he has accomplished lately. Also, Tider Insider TV will be taking your phone calls and answering your emails. You see the phone number there on your screen, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or you can drop us a line at TITV@WVUATV.com. Of course, later in the show, Rodney and I will make our predictions on Alabama and LSU. You're watching the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV, presented by Buffalo Rock. Welcome back to Tider Insider Television. Tickets for the Alabama-LSU game on StubHub.com range from $225 to $3,500. And for a spot in the posh Tiger Den Suites, you'll have to ante up $9,950. Now, this might not be the game of the century because both teams aren't undefeated. LSU has a loss, but when number one Alabama comes to Death Valley on a Saturday night with the SEC West at stake, it's easily the game of the year in the SEC, and those ticket prices reflect that. Well, Alabama's Chance Warmack is the SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week. He graded out 90% with 4 pancake blocks. He had no missed assignments, no penalties, no sacks, and allowed no pressures in the Crimson Tide's victory over Mississippi State. Warmack helped block for a ground game that totaled 179 yards, led by T.J. Yeldon's game-high 84 rushing yards on 10 carries. Big number 65, probably going to be a first-round draft pick. Well, basketball season is right around the corner. Alabama has been picked to finish 6th in the 14-team Southeastern Conference on the men's side. The Tide is talented, fairly experienced, and athletic, and they have their sights set on a second straight trip to the NCAA tournament.
You know, the plan for us is to try to put ourselves in position with the way we shape our non-conference schedule and the expectations of the league that if we do what we're supposed to do, we're in a position to get postseason opportunities. So, you know, that's what we look at. So the bottom line is like every other coach, you got to win. You got to put your team in position through winning to have those opportunities.
Meanwhile, the Alabama women have been picked to finish last in the SEC. But head coach Wendell Hudson is optimistic about his team this season. And if practice is any indication, this team could surprise some people.
Out of the number of practices we've had, I think we've had 12 or 13, something like that. I would count that maybe one of them was not probably that good. And so the consistency in practice has been really good.
Well, still to come, Rodney and I will make our predictions on Alabama and LSU. And up next, time to give us a shout here on the show and get on the program with your questions or comments. 205-348-9882 is the number, or you can email us, TITV@WVUATV.com. We got several emails last week that we didn't get on the show, but we're going to try to get some of those on tonight. So stay with us. Your voices will be heard next here on Tider Insider Television. It's Alabama LSU week. Rodney, we've got a lot of folks waiting to talk to us. Let's get right to it. First up, our buddy in Tuscaloosa, Joseph. Joseph, what's up? Joseph, you with us?
I still hear you.
Yeah, go ahead, Joseph.
Hey, let me ask y'all something. Hey, but how do y'all think Landon Collins feel about the decision he made about coming to Alabama?
Joseph, I think he feels great about it. He's been a major contributor on special teams, blocked a punt at Missouri, learning the safety position. I think he's happy to be here. I think he's going to have a great career.
Well, first thing everyone wants to talk about is, certainly he was highly billed coming out of high school and, not getting the opportunity, not saying he didn't get the opportunity because everyone gets the opportunity to play here, but not being ready at this point. That's not something that's unusual, Joseph. You look back to Mark Barron. His freshman year, he didn't play a whole lot either in terms of on the defensive side of the ball, was a special teams guy. And, Gary, it takes time to get acclimated. Plus, there's a lot of other good players here already that have some experience. So, but look for Landon Collins in the future.
Absolutely, I agree. Let's go to Coleman and talk to Johnny. Johnny, welcome to the program, buddy.
Hey, guys, how are y'all?
Hey, just great.
I was just wanting to call and see what you thought about Marcus Lattimore with him being injured, which I hope the best wishes for him. And how do y'all think they're going to turn out the rest of the season without it?
Well, first of all, Johnny, is good news. Steve Spurrier said yesterday that he thinks Lattimore can come back next year and resume his football career. It looked so bad on Saturday. Without him, they're still a pretty good football team. Let's be clear on that. But he's the best player on their offense. They're a run-first team, and it's a big loss for them, no doubt about it.
Their quarterback, Johnny, Connor Shaw, is going to have to kind of pick up the slack, and he's had a pretty decent year. He's been a little bit banged up, but losing a guy like Marcus Lattimore is very difficult to overcome.
All right, let's go to Fayette and talk to Gary. One Gary to another. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. I just want to know if Alabama's going to wear red jerseys Saturday night.
They will, Gary. Alabama is one of those teams that agrees to let LSU wear their white jerseys at home. Every now and then you'll have a team that comes in and says, no, we're not going to wear our home jerseys. But there's, the rivalry aside, there's always has been a pretty good relationship between Alabama and LSU. Charlie Mack and Coach Bryant, of course, were really close. Jerry Stovall had a lot of respect for Alabama. Curly Hallman had ties to the Alabama program. So Alabama will wear their crimson jerseys down in Baton Rouge.
Yep. Did it for years until, the NCAA had a rule at one time that forced the home team to wear their dark jerseys. So you'd see LSU in purple, which kind of looked odd. You remember the Dallas Cowboys back in the day, Gary, always wore their white jerseys. The Cardinals would make them wear the blue jerseys when they'd come to St. Louis. But anyway, they'll be in crimson. Yeah, the white jerseys at home for LSU are tradition. But you're right, Gary. The visiting team has to agree to wear their home jerseys, but Alabama will do that on Saturday night. Let's get an email in before we have to take a break from Marion Trustful. Why does Saban leave A.J. in even after the game is decided? It's a question a lot of people are asking. A lot of people are talking about it because he got a bruised back in the Mississippi State game, hurt his knee against Tennessee. I think the easy answer, Rodney, for me is Saban's trying to win the game, and he doesn't want to lose the rhythm of the offense too quickly, even when we have a big lead. And, I don't have any problem with him keeping him in there for a good portion of the game. When did he come out? I think it was late in third quarter. Was it late? Or was it early?
Well, against Mississippi State, he didn't play the fourth quarter at all.
Didn't play the fourth quarter
but he had gotten a bruise back by that time. It's just one of those things. I think Coach Saban goes by his gut. Football players are going to have to play. And so far, it's worked out. But I do think a lot of people are looking at that. And you could make an argument maybe in a couple of games they could have gotten the backup in a little bit sooner. But that's Coach Saban's call. All right, going to take another timeout. More phone calls and emails right after this. Stay with us. Phone callers are waiting, but let's get an email in. It's a two-parter. Did we see a 4 tight end set against Tennessee? And is this the best offense in UA history? From Patrick in Tuscaloosa. Rodney, I can't remember if we saw a 4 tight end set against Tennessee, but they have used it in power formations.
Williams, Vogler, Harrison Jones, Kelly Johnson. I think there's been a couple of times I've noticed that. I don't know if they did it against Michigan or not, but certainly I think they have done that a time or two.
And the second part about being the best offense in UA history, I'd have to go back and look at some of those other great offenses and think about that one a while. But it is a good offense, an efficient offense. Like last year, one of the most balanced offenses that we've ever seen.
When you're talking about the best offense in Alabama history, that goes a long way back. But, in my time, I remember the 1973 offense was incredible. They rolled up over 700 yards against Virginia Tech one day, had 4 guys go over 100 yards rushing, including the quarterback Richard Todd at the time. And so, that was certainly a great offense. I think they averaged close to 44 points a game. And I thought the Homer Smith offense was outstanding. It was a little bit different than this. It was a little bit more finesse. But I thought that was an outstanding offense in 1989. But this, Gary, when you look at this offense, they're so balanced. They have so many. When you're talking about weapons, the number of weapons, really, mentioning that 1989 team, it didn't have nearly the weapons this team has. You look at that wide receiver core that Alabama has and the running backs and the level that A.J. McCarron's playing on, and not to mention the offensive line. It's an outstanding offense.
33 points or more in every game this season. All right, let's go back to the phones. Williams and Saginaw. William, welcome in.
Hey, good evening, Gary and Rodney.
Hey, William.
My question is concerning C.J. Mosley's importance in the game Saturday to help us win.
Yeah, he's important in every game. He is a playmaking linebacker. They got some great linebackers, but he is the most versatile of the group, talking about the DePriest, Johnson, and Mosley. He can cover the pass, he can blitz, he can play the run. He's turned into a great player. He's vital in every game.
And I think, what does he lead? The Alabama in tackles by almost 30 tackles or something like that. And, he's just so active, makes so many plays, Gary. And, he would have had another interception. He's got a penchant for making interceptions. He would have had another one the other day, but you remember it hit the ref.
That's right.
When it was he's certainly kind of, I think, stepped up. Nick Saban talked before the season that he wanted someone to step up at that linebacker spot and become that leader. And I think when you look at what C.J. Mosley's doing, he's taken on that role.
Yeah, he'll be crucial against LSU, William. All right, let's go to Sulligent and talk with Bobby. Bobby, how are you?
Oh, fine, sir. I just wanted to ask a question. Does it seem like the defense has gotten better and better week after week to y'all?
Yes, it does. And I just think they're already good at, when they started the season. But yeah, I think they've added a little bit in terms of scheme every week. They've played more players. They got a great rotation. I think they've continued to improve.
Well, what do you think about Denzel Duval, the freshman?
Going to be awesome.
Yeah.
He may have the best burst off the edge of anybody they've got.
Really looks like he's got an opportunity to be an outstanding pass rusher.
So yeah, I think the defense continues to get better, and Coach Saban's talked about that. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. You're never staying the same. It looks like Alabama's getting better on defense. That's a scary thought for the opposition. All right, coming up, it's prediction time. What will we pick? Who will we pick? How do we think it'll go? We'll tell you next here on Titv. Predictions in a moment, but first, Ronnie and I again outfitted from the Locker Room, a Tuscaloosa tradition since 1964, located on the University Strip. We've got the original elephant wear shirts on this evening. Again, get by the Locker Room right there on the Strip. Check out the original elephant wear line. They've got just about everything for you. Great service, too. When you buy from the Locker Room, they'll size you up if you need to be sized up, and they'll take care of you after the sale as well. If you need to return something, there'll be no problem there with Alex and the folks at the Locker Room. All right, Rodney, it's prediction time, Alabama and LSU.
Well, yeah, I'm going to make this one short and sweet, Gary. When you look at these two teams, I just think Alabama's the more well-rounded team. LSU struggled offensively. Hey, I give them all the credit in the world for the issues they've had up front and the way they've overcome those the last few games and running the football really well. But if Alabama, again, I'll say it like I said last week, if Alabama plays well, does not turn the ball over to LSU and give them anything, they should win this football game. I'll pick it 20-10 because I think it's going to be a defensive struggle.
There's not a lot I can add to that because I agree. If Alabama takes care of the football, they're better. And that's not to say LSU's not a really fine football team, because they are. But Alabama's a better team. I still feel like they were a better team last year in Tuscaloosa. They didn't play well. That could happen again. If the Tide doesn't play its best, LSU could beat them. But I think Alabama, this team is on a mission to get to Atlanta. I know they want to win another national championship, but I also think they want to win the SEC. 24-13, Bama gets it done in Death Valley on Saturday night. All right, that's going to do it for the program. It's dinner time tonight. We're over at Buddy's Rib and Steak in North Point. Join us tonight about 7:15 for some great ribs, steak, or chicken. For Rodney, I'm Gary. Thanks for watching. Good night.